there, I'm George Burciaga with US Roundtable, and I'm excited today. We're actually shooting our virtual session for tomorrow.cities for the Smart City Expo World Congress, which is coming up right around the corner, and we're super excited for a couple of reasons. We have a huge audience from around the world, 700 cities, over 100 countries, and city leaders from everywhere. Today's an important discussion. We're with my favorite mayor, Mayor Aftab Pureval, from the great city of Cincinnati. And with that, Mayor, I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourself, tell the world who you are, and let us know a little bit about your city.
Thank you so much, George, for having me, for extending this virtual invitation, because so sadly I can't be there in person. But this is Smart City World Expo World Congress, excuse me, is so important to Cincinnati and to our country that I really felt compelled to be here, at least virtually. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. As George mentioned, just quickly about me, I'm the 70th mayor of the great city of Cincinnati. I am the first Asian American mayor, not just of Cincinnati, but really of a major American city in the entire Midwest. I'm the son of a refugee. My mother was born in Tibet and forced to flee. She grew up as a refugee in India, where she met my father. And they got married in India and decided to immigrate to Beaver Creek, Ohio, George, in 1980. And I was born and raised. I'm 6'3", half Tibetan, half Indian, but I'm all Ohio, baby. So I'm so proud to be mayor of Cincinnati in this moment, and so proud to be with you today, George.
Well, we love it. And one, it's an incredible story. I actually didn't know the background, but it's an incredible and, of course, powerful story, and probably fits so well for what we're seeing today around the world, and how we really need to come together, really connect, and really take care of each other. And you do have a global story. So thank you. And because you couldn't be with us in person, we're fortunate enough to have you on today. I really wanted to shine a light on some of the incredible work you're doing with technology across a few areas. Because we have limited time, we'll probably stick to two, but wanted to see if, Mayor, you could tell us a little bit about the public safety work you're doing with technology in general, whether it's AI or new technologies. I would really love to hear about that, because I know for a fact we have mayors from around the world that are watching, and we want them to take something back from this. And we also want them to know who you are. And we also want them to know that the US is really thinking out of the box. We're really challenging everybody. So tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about your public safety initiatives.
Yeah, leveraging AI, new technologies, whether it's AI or Web3, blockchain, et cetera, is really at the heart of what we do here in Cincinnati, whether it's public safety, housing, economic development, climate issues. There are opportunities to leverage new technologies and addressing all of those areas. And nowhere is that more profound than in public safety. Public safety, gun violence is unfortunately a uniquely American challenge. And because it's so overwhelming, it really requires innovation and leaning into risk. Anytime you're innovating at all in government, but particularly in public safety, there's an amazing amount of pushback to maintain the status quo, because anytime you're taking a risk in public safety, there could be tragic consequences to that. So the first thing I want to talk about before we get into the actual specific programs is more of an issue of culture. And what I have found, I was in the private sector before coming into politics. What I have found is that it's incredibly hard to innovate in public service, because there's very little risk tolerance, because no one wants to fail. No one wants to fail publicly. No one wants to fail using taxpayer dollars. So creating a culture where innovation and iterative failure and learning is possible is really, really important before you can even launch into these programs, because so many cities and municipalities are so risk averse. So that's the first thing that we're really trying to do, is challenge that status quo and make it okay to learn from our failures iteratively, because without that, there's no innovation. So what we have done here in the public safety space is really twofold. The first is our 911 call taker training. You know, in the past year, we have implemented a new machine learning program to train our call takers for crisis response scenarios. This isn't just about a dynamic script. A text-to-voice program is able to introduce challenges like different accents, background noise, real-time updates to scenarios based on how the call taker responds. We are actively studying the impact this has on the speed of call direction, because when you're in a crisis and you're calling 911 or needing public safety to show up immediately, this kind of training is allowing us to do that. And that is important because it pairs with what we call ARC. This is our alternative crisis response program. For the last 20 years, we are really proud of the fact that for some 911 calls, we have done a co-response model, mental health professionals with police officers. We're taking that next step in innovation and now only sending mental health professionals to some of our 911 calls, mental health crises, addiction, homelessness, et cetera. Coming into office 2 years ago, we had this conceptual understanding that there was an inefficiency in crisis response. When police officers are being sent to a 911 call that predictably doesn't require an officer and doesn't involve a potentially violent situation, that's not the best service the city can provide for the person in need. And it's also a waste of the officer's time. Those officer resources could otherwise be somewhere else preventing violence. Especially with a subject like policing, however, you're not going to get buy-in to make a large blanket change to policing strategy without clearly demonstrating its positive change benefits and mitigating and fully understanding any of the unintended consequences. We began this pilot program for ARC in a rigorous data study, a geographical boundary where historical data showed the highest volume of these kinds of 911 calls, consistent time windows for staffing to ensure that we knew exactly where the gaps were. And the results are profoundly positive. Through our dashboard, we were able to map the effects and measure that the pilot was saving nearly 300 hours of officer time in a single year. That's critically important because Cincinnati, like other American cities, are seeing a historic amount of retirements for police officers and smaller recruit classes. So it's incumbent upon cities to use data, artificial intelligence, new technologies in order to maximize the public safety resources that we have, particularly in the face of increasing gun violence. The capacity of this pilot program was able to respond to about 1/10 of eligible calls. So we know that there's a massive community of folks out there who need this kind of innovation. The dashboard for this is incredibly important because having data is one thing, but making it publicly available, making it open source, which we have done, and making it accessible through a dashboard so people can see exactly where these data points are and what our strategy is to address these issues. This dashboard, we were able to create a detailed heat map of the need as well as an understanding of the peak hours of demand. And because of all of this, we could go back to the community and our policymakers with a well-informed and well-justified policy to expand this program. That's what we did, more than doubling our capacity, and we've continued to track the progress. So, public safety is our first, second, and third priority here in Cincinnati. I'm sure that's true across the board. And this is just a small example of how we're using new technologies to kind of disrupt the status quo of 911 response times.
Mayor, I picked up while you were speaking, I wrote down maybe 25 different keywords. It was important because what you said is so critical. In fact, you just blew my mind because for so long, I've sat in this chair kind of talking to mayors around the world on the importance of critical change, deep thinking. But I always give sort of this example that your city should, if a gunshot goes off, dispatch police, tell the bus to stop moving in that area, notify people via mobile, put up the alert on the kiosk, turn on the cameras, brighten the light. But the data component is only possible based on what you said. And the idea that you're collecting data, leveraging AI, being more predictive, taking that back, reducing hours. What I found out with this culture change, everything you said, you really humanize an experience and build efficiencies around what cities should do moving forward. The same process and sort of status quo doesn't work anymore. And you're right, it is a challenging subject and topic to bring to the table. When you say public safety, I'm going to try something new, the same people who are hollering, they need more public safety are also then complaining maybe there's a privacy issue, maybe there's something else. There's always a reason And I'm so glad that you're doing this, because within the last maybe 20 conversations I've had with other cities, your colleagues, they've all talked about wanting to go in this direction. So when did your pilot start? And when will it be over, if it isn't over? And then what are the next steps to implement something like this?
Yeah, so the pilot started middle of last year. It's been going for the last 12 months, and it's been so successful in not only saving police officer time, but also connecting people in crisis directly to mental health resources, that we're actually expanding it. We've in our last budget allocated more money to this pilot program. It is currently in one police district. We're expanding it to two more in this next budget cycle, and we're hoping to expand it to the entire city and have dedicated funding resources in order to achieve that. But the other thing that you mentioned, George, which I think is critically important right now, is the importance of data-driven policymaking, particularly in public safety, where there's so much misinformation, there's so much partisan disagreement about how to effectively reduce gun violence and violent crime in communities. And it's a challenge because of the lack of agreement on what truth is. When we see the dysfunction at the federal level in Congress, when we see the dysfunction at state levels, and even to a certain degree at local levels, we are currently governing in an atmosphere where nobody trusts their political leaders. Nobody has any faith, frankly, in their elected officials doing what's best for the city. And data, it really helps us cut through that, because a data-driven approach to policymaking is important for two reasons. Number one, it creates the best possible policy, but number two, it also justifies and demonstrates the value of that policy. And that second point is so critically important right now when so many people are cynical and skeptical about government. Being able to show your work through data and being able to hold on to what that truth is so critically important as we not just talk about public safety, but we talk about all substantive issues facing modern American cities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we have a lot to learn from this pilot, and it's incredible that you're looking to expand it across the city. But I really think, when you're done, and I'm sure you're already planning this, sharing this in some sort of white paper, use case, and then also taking it to USCM or National League of Cities and to accelerators, so they can actually learn from it and really publish this, because I'm hearing this across the country, and I'm hearing it in other parts of the world, that the direction they're looking at what you're doing and they're not sure how to go about it. So faster we can learn. And you probably have done more work in this space than I've seen anybody do, since you've been doing this since mid last year. I mean, that's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. You've looked at the policy piece, you've justified it so that data makes more sense. I think the more folks can learn from things that make more sense, the faster we can move in a direction that creates the change that we're looking for. So I applaud you for that. That's incredible. With that said, I know you have a couple of other projects that you're working on as well. We quickly discussed a couple of weeks ago the idea of drones and AI and other work with other companies like Deloitte and others to really move this forward in partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Can you give us a quick sort of teaser on what you're doing there as well before we wrap this up?
Yeah, Cincinnati, in partnership with the state of Ohio and the state of Kentucky, recently received the single largest federal grant in our country's history, $1 billion, in order to redo the Brent Spence Bridge. This is a bridge that connects the state of Ohio with the state of Kentucky over the Ohio River. But most importantly, from a national perspective, 3% of our GDP comes over this bridge. It's an incredibly important artery for interstate commerce, not just in Ohio, but nationally. And unfortunately, this bridge has been falling apart for the last several decades. It wasn't until President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill that we had the resources from the federal government to really put shovels in the ground for this ultimately $3 to $4 billion project. But because of that, Cincinnati has kind of been put on the map for infrastructure needs. And in order to innovate in this space, we partnered with Deloitte and the U.S. Conference of Mayors to work with them to create drone technology powered by AI and machine learning to be able to more effectively and cost effectively monitor all of our infrastructure, whether it's our roads or our bridges, And this is particularly useful because it is incredibly resource intensive, particularly from a human capital perspective, to monitor all the bridges and roads and infrastructure in our city. By leveraging technology, we're able to do that more cheaply, and we're able to better identify and predict the areas where we're going to need to make investments and going to need to more carefully manage and prolong the life of these bridges and roads. Any chance that a city can get to be more efficient, to be more cost effective, particularly in this increasingly unclear economic picture, not just in our country, but globally, that's something that mayors are absolutely going to jump at. And we're hoping that this innovative program with Deloitte paves the way for future mayors to jump onto.
I love it. I love how you've taken the investment that you received from the federal government, you looked at investing it into something that becomes sustainable long-term, and then you're using technology to really rethink how your city and the other cities surrounding you will actually live for the next 50, 60, 70 years. It's incredible. So before we wrap this up, I just want to say thank you. Not only are you the best dressed mayor in the United States, not only are you a dear friend, I love the fact that you continue to inspire the country. And during this session with Smart City Expo World Congress in Barcelona, you'll support Inspiring the World. From the US Roundtable, we say thank you for everything you do. Every time we talk, I always walk away thinking there's something more I should be doing. So I just want to say thank you. My co-host, Oprah Winfrey, Mayor Hancock couldn't be here, but he wanted to send his regards and wants to also let you know that he's excited to catching up at some point soon. This virtual roundtable will be positioned with a few others, which will include conversations with Mayor Turner from Houston and a few other mayors from around the US. So we thank you for starting this, inspiring us, and really help moving us forward. Mayor, thank you for everything you do.
George, thank you so much. To everyone in Barcelona, thank you for digging into this incredibly important subject. Thank you for innovating across the globe. Thank you for creating new ideas and new programs that other cities can learn from, steal, and make their city better. I'm sorry I can't be there this year, but rest assured, next year, Cincinnati will have a presence. Thank you, George. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for everything. God bless.